You know how it is when there's an accident, right? The first thing we do is look for someone to blame. But what if it's not that simple? What if the person who got hurt was also, well, a little bit at fault? That's what we're digging into today. How the law figures out who's really responsible and ultimately who pays. I mean, think about it. Have you ever gotten in a car with a friend who maybe had one too many? Or, I don't know, tried a risky stunt just for the fun of it, knowing it could backfire? It's that little voice in your head, that nagging question. Wait, was that partly on me? That's exactly what we're talking about.
And you know what? The way the law answers that question is a huge deal. It can literally be the difference between getting compensated for a serious injury or getting absolutely nothing. So let's break down the two main legal ideas that draw that line in the sand.
All right, first up, we've got the big one, the old school, super strict rule. And when I say strict, I mean it. This is the defense that can just completely shut down a claim. Game over.
Okay, the legal term for it sounds pretty intimidating. Valenti non fit injuria. Don't worry about the Latin, though. The idea behind it is actually really simple. It basically says, if you know something is dangerous and you decide to do it anyway, well, you can't turn around and sue if you get hurt. You knew the risk, you accepted it, end of story.
There's this old legal saying that just nails it. From the law's point of view, if you willingly put yourself in harm's way, then in a legal sense, there's no wrong that needs to be paid for. It's like you gave your consent to the possibility of getting hurt.
So let's look at a real-world example to see how this works. In this case, you had these experienced workers, right? They were told exactly what safety rules to follow, but they decided to ignore them, just cut corners, and then boom, an explosion, and one of them gets seriously injured. The court looked at it and said, look, this guy wasn't new. He knew the rules, he knew what could happen if he broke them, and he made a choice.
And here's the kicker. The amount of money the court awarded him for his injuries, a big fat zero. Nothing. Because he voluntarily took that risk, it was a complete and total defense. The consequences are, well, absolute.
But man, that all or nothing thing sounds kind of harsh, doesn't it? I mean, what if you were just a little bit careless? Does that mean you get nothing? Well, that's where the law has another more flexible approach, one that doesn't just slam the door on a claim, but instead adjusts it. And that brings us to our second big idea, and honestly, it's one you see a lot more often these days. It's called contributory negligence. And here, it's not about a simple win or lose. It's about sharing the blame. The magic word here is reduced. See, unlike that first offense, this one doesn't just kill the whole claim. Instead, the court steps in and says, okay, yeah, the other guy was negligent, but you were a little bit careless yourself. And then they do some math and figure out a percentage of fault for everyone involved. A perfect example is this case, Jocelyn versus Berryman. So you have a passenger who gets hurt in a car crash. The court found the driver was mostly at fault, like 70%. But then they ask a really important question. Hey, should that passenger have ever gotten into a car with someone who was clearly intoxicated to begin with? And the court's answer was a hard no. That single decision, getting into the car, meant the passenger contributed to their own injuries. So, did they get some money? Yes, but the total amount was sliced by 30% to account for their share of the blame. So you might be wondering, how did we go from that super harsh, you get nothing rule to this more balanced system of just sharing the blame? To wrap this all up, let's take a quick look at how the law itself changed. Basically, people started realizing that the old all-or-nothing system just wasn't very fair. You could be 1% at fault and still lose everything. So lawmakers stepped in and passed what are called law reform acts. These were total game changers. They gave judges the power to actually look at the whole situation and divvy up the responsibility in a way that makes sense. Okay, so let's put it all together one last time. On one side, you've got Valenti, the you knew the risk defense. The result? You get zero. On the other side, contributory negligence, the you were partly to blame defense. The result? You get less money. Two totally different outcomes, and it all comes down to the choices people made. And that really brings it all back to us, doesn't it? It leaves us with a big question that's not just for lawyers. In our everyday lives, where do we draw that line for ourselves? What's the difference between knowingly taking a risk and just being a bit careless? Because figuring that out, well, it's not just about the law. It's about understanding the real-world consequences we're willing to accept.